Yeah, Louis, sorry, we gave the two of you a card. It was just not good enough here. And obviously, we read the race wrong.
That was Toto Wolff, the Mercedes boss, publicly apologizing to Hamilton and Russell after the Singapore Grand Prix. A public apology is a rare thing in Formula One, but what led to this moment? Today, we're going to dive deep into the problems Mercedes faced this weekend and how it affected their drivers. We'll unravel the strategy that went wrong, the car issues, Hamilton and Russell's palpable frustration, how Mercedes compared to their rivals, and what this means for the future of the team. Get ready for a complete analysis of Mercedes' nightmare in Singapore, and if you're an F1 fan who wants to stay updated with all the analyses and news, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Let's start by dissecting the Mercedes strategy that, quite frankly, went entirely wrong. The German team decided to take a big gamble right off the bat, putting Hamilton on soft tires at the start of the race. In theory, this could have given him an edge, allowing him to attack Verstappen and even Norris in the opening laps. But as we know, not everything in Formula One goes as planned. Hamilton got close to Verstappen in the first corner, but the Dutchman defended his position well. From there, the 7-time champion's ordeal began. The soft tires, known for their rapid degradation, started to suffer sooner than expected. Hamilton found himself not attacking, but defending. The team, realizing the initial strategy wasn't working, called Hamilton into the pits on lap 18. An early stop that the British driver immediately questioned. "You're killing me with this offset, guys," Hamilton said over the radio, clearly frustrated with the team's decision. And rightly so. The early stop put him back on the track with traffic ahead and tires that would have to last much longer than ideal. Mercedes, known for their brilliant strategies in the past, seemed to have completely lost their way in Singapore. But was the problem only with the strategy? Well, the truth is Mercedes was fighting against itself from the start of the weekend. The W15, a car that has shown flashes of speed throughout the season, seemed out of place on the streets of Singapore. Even in free practice, it was clear something was wrong. Hamilton and Russell reported grip issues, difficulties in slow-speed corners, and a lack of pace on the straights. The team worked overnight to try to solve the problems, but the improvements were marginal. During the race, the situation became even more evident. Hamilton, usually smooth behind the wheel, seemed to be struggling with the car at every corner. "Something's definitely wrong with the car, guys. The tires are degrading," he said over the radio in a moment of pure frustration. The Marina Bay circuit, known for its technical layout and challenging conditions, exposed all the weaknesses of the W15. In the slow corners, where the car should have shined, it felt heavy and unresponsive. On the straights, where the Mercedes engine usually stands out, the car seemed to be running with a parachute open. Toto Wolff, always candid in his assessments, admitted after the race, "We gave them a car that simply wasn't good enough here." A statement that perfectly sums up Mercedes' weekend. And when the car doesn't respond and the strategy fails, the ones who suffer the most are the drivers. If you've ever been frustrated in traffic, imagine that feeling multiplied by 1,000. That's more or less what Hamilton and Russell felt during the Singapore GP. Hamilton in particular couldn't hide his irritation. His radio messages throughout the race were a mix of confusion and frustration. "You put me in a terrible position," he said at one point, clearly questioning the team's decisions. Russell, on the other hand, seemed to be fighting a lonely battle in the middle of the pack. Despite securing fourth place, it was evident that he was extracting more from the car than it could offer. The peak of frustration came after the race. In an unusual move, both drivers chose not to participate in the post-race interviews. Mercedes issued a statement explaining that the drivers were recovering from the demands of tonight's race. Translation: they were exhausted, frustrated, and probably didn't trust themselves to speak to the media at that moment. And who can blame them? Singapore is already known as one of the most demanding races on the calendar. Add to that a difficult car to drive, a strategy that didn't work, and unmet expectations, and you have the perfect recipe for a weekend to forget. But the big question that remains is, how did Mercedes, a team that dominated Formula One for so long, end up in this situation? And more importantly, how do they compare now with their main rivals? While Mercedes was battling their own demons in Singapore, their rivals seemed to be in a completely different league. Let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris not only took pole position, but dominated the race from start to finish. The young Brit crossed the finish line with a lead of over 20 seconds from the second-place finisher. To put that in perspective, it's as if Norris was racing in Singapore while Mercedes was still in Monaco, and we can't forget Red Bull. Despite not having the pace to challenge Norris, Max Verstappen secured a solid second place. This on a weekend that the Austrian team considered one of their weak points. Imagine if it were one of their strengths. The pace difference was striking. While Norris and Verstappen seemed to glide through Marina Bay's streets, Hamilton and Russell looked like they were driving go-karts in comparison. With each lap, the gap widened, and with it, Mercedes' chances of fighting for the podium dwindled. This performance puts into perspective how far Mercedes has fallen. From a team that used to start on pole, they're now struggling to even get on the podium. But the burning question is, was this just a bad weekend or a symptom of deeper problems within the Brackley team? The performance in Singapore is not just a blow to Mercedes' aspirations this season, it raises serious questions about the team's future. First, let's talk about the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes is in 4th place. If at the start of the season, the fight was for 2nd or 3rd place against Ferrari and McLaren, now they are 4th, and with what we're seeing, I believe they'll finish the year there. An unthinkable position a few years ago for the team that dominated F1's hybrid era. The 7-time champion has already announced his move to Ferrari in 2025. Will we see him on the podium again this year? Mercedes clearly has a lot of work ahead. The car needs significant improvements, not just for this season, but already looking toward next year. The technical team, led by James Allison, will have to find quick solutions if they want to avoid 2024 becoming a sabbatical year. We've talked a lot about cars, strategies, and performance, but there's a crucial element that often goes unnoticed: the psychological factor in Formula One. A weekend like this one for Mercedes in Singapore doesn't just affect the on-track results. It can have a profound impact on the mindset of the entire team. The pressure mounts, confidence diminishes, and mistakes that didn't happen before start becoming more frequent. We saw this in the questionable strategic decisions, the tense radio communications, and the driver's body language after the race. To turn this situation around, Mercedes doesn't just need to improve the car or fine-tune their strategies. They need to work on the mental aspect, rebuilding that confidence, that champion mentality that took them to the top. I want to hear from you. What does Mercedes need to do to get back to the top? Will we see Hamilton fighting for wins before his move to Ferrari? Or has the partnership reached its end with no more victories? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue this conversation. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Singapore GP. Subscribe to the channel for more F1 content, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos.